buy yourself a gun. What? Gun? What? Like a handgun. For personal protection. If somebody tries to mug you. What? What if your government tries to throw you in a dam? What? You're gonna want a shotgun. Oh. What? An automatic rifle. And a lot of ammo. Gun? Yeah, gun.
We're all set to riot. Buy a gun. Before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They'll burn you out like a Waco. They'll stick your ass in a camp. Jackbooty cops in riot gear, gonna kick your ass and laugh. The revolution is on its way. Better lock and load your AK. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. We're all set to riot. Buy a gun. Before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They gave your money to the banksters. They stole your pension funds. It's time that we took to the streets. It's time we had our turn. A revolution is on its way, and the founding fathers would say, buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Revolution's not clean and neat, you gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat, you gotta drag them through the streets.
It is Tuesday. We are live. This is PrimerTime on UCY. There are only certain number of hours left until Christmas.
that would be true, and I have just spent minutes wrapping up all the Christmas that I'm going to do.
I'm getting everybody the same thing I got them last year.
Which is nothing. All right, well, folks, this is Primer Time. It's Tuesday. It's live. I'm Nicholas.
I'm a possible suspect. So, what's going on with you?
I tell you what, this holiday season, I was reminded upon my travel into the larger outlying town, and the reason why certain people become targets for vehicles that are driving on the roadways and as they exit the roadways into shopping stores or shopping malls. I'm reminded of the fact why when you see a vehicle coming and you don't have the law of self-preservation foremost in your mind about getting out of the way, I understand why people run you over now.
Yeah, I'm finding that in as our society is progressing kind of towards spinning out of control towards the apocalypse, finding that things that we used to, you and I grew up with as standards no longer exist.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just just another date in the book. So
I found it
I've noticed it with.
I was just going to say I found it interesting that as I'm exiting the roadway, which is already just choked with traffic, that as I'm entering the mall, there's two pedestrians who decided to cross at a non-marked pedestrian crossing. So basically, they were jaywalking, and as they're jaywalking, they just decided to go ahead and get into the turn lane that I'm entering, and they just kind of sat there and looked at me as I stopped in the middle of the intersection. And considering I'm in a larger truck and they're on foot, I would think that the law of physics somehow applies.
Well, jaywalking almost sounds, harmless, but if you've ever lived in a bigger city, I mean, jaywalking is an actual. I mean, like, we'll just take an incident that happened recently in Las Vegas. That woman ran over, however many people, 18, 23 people, whatever it was. But, I wonder how many people almost get hit a day just jaywalking in Las Vegas, just on the Strip. I mean, it's a crazy place to walk. There's a lot of traffic. I mean, what is it? 4 lanes each way, 5 lanes each way?
Yeah.
So I mean, it really is kind of it's one of those trivial issues that actually becomes a problem in larger cities now. Where I live, if you jaywalk and you get arrested for it, that just means cops don't like you.
Yeah, the weird thing is that we were talking about it earlier this evening. We're having a problem with the homeless starting to set up encampments, setting up shop in the middle of intersections, and I don't really believe that these are people who are genuinely down on their luck. I gotta say it, man. I believe that these are people who just decided that they figure it's easier to get a handout than a hand up, and that's what they're going
So
for.
okay, so like I've read a little bit about like the homeless panhandling situation, and I mean I've lived in towns where they've had panhandlers working intersections, and if you can make $300 a day holding the sign sitting there, and that's a hell of a lot better than making $86 a day and having to work your ass off next to a fry, a deep fryer, and or bagging groceries or digging a ditch or something like that. I mean, just on the fact that you're getting $300 and not having to do anything.
Yeah, and if you live in cities like San Francisco, they'll go ahead and just give you a ton of cash just to make sure that you go ahead and get high from their actual distribution points for any of the assorted and sundry drugs that are pervasive in that city.
So you would get sundry drugs and cash?
Well, one leads to the other, but I believe that they have state-sponsored or city-sponsored distribution points.
So you can get drugs, cash, and not work doing this?
Yeah, and not only that, you can get drugs, cash, not work. You can also defecate and urinate in the streets of the city of San Francisco and not
Well,
get carted off
that's
to
a
jail.
time saver because sometimes it's hard to find a bathroom.
Well, and the bad thing is that for anybody that's ever been a tourist to the city of San Francisco, there's a big mystique about going there. You spent some time in the city by the bay, or the city as locals call it. It's one thing to show up and kind of want to see the things that you want to see, the iconic images of San Francisco. It's an entirely different thing altogether to see it and then gets, scared out of your mind by a homeless dude who's taking a dump right on the sidewalk.
This almost seems to have like a ring of personal personal urgency here.
Well, I used to recruit for the Army in the city and county of San Francisco, as well as the city and county of Santa Clara, and they're neighboring counties. The big problem that I have is that you've got a population of people that are really they're really preying on folks that are going to do business in the city or going to visit folks, and when they have to get out of their car and they have to park on the street, it's really a protection racket. I believe the term is racketeering. You've got homeless guys that will walk right up to you as soon as you park your car and tell you, I'd hate for anything to happen to your car, so that way you can go ahead and
that's extortion is what that is.
yeah. Hey, Michael, would you mind carrying the show for a second? I've got a number 2 emergency
Sure.
on a 3-year-old.
Oh, I understand that completely.
All right.
Well, all right. So Nikki's playing single dad for tonight, and speaking of San Francisco, we've just seen that recently. The last firearms dealer in San Francisco closed his door, and just from a business practice, the way the city of San Francisco acted towards this dealer was unconscionable. They kept putting restrictions on him outside of the law and would pass laws specifically aimed at him. The latest thing that they wouldn't comply, that the dealer would not comply with, was actually an ordinance that would have required that every sale of a firearm come with a videotape of the transaction to make sure that there was no sort of nefariousness going on. Him being the only firearms dealer in the city of San Francisco was, I think he was under a ton of scrutiny, and they basically pushed this guy out. And, it's just one of another ongoing assault on our rights. We've seen that the president, who's right now on vacation, is probably furiously consulting with attorneys and seeing exactly how he can subvert the Second Amendment right now. he had a news conference just the other day, and was able to, in a roundabout way, speak about gun control. So it's on its way.
All right, Michael, I'm back. Whew.
I'm glad.
I'm telling you what, my 3-year-old is mastering the Army art of urination on command.
Good job.
So,
So I just basically kind of spoke about how San Francisco recently closed its last gun store, and we've got an onslaught once again against our rights. And you've got a story that kind of hits home for you.
yeah, certainly do.
And it's kind of a big story.
It is a big story, and I think it's a story that not only affects folks in my state, it actually affects anybody from out of state with a concealed carry permit. And basically what we have is the Attorney General of the state of Virginia. His name is Mark Herring. He's a political appointee by the governor, who is also a member of the Clinton camp. He's a frequent visitor to the Clinton White House, very big donor of the current Clinton candidacy, and I'm sure that he will be he will on the short list of politicians that are lining up for jobs should Hillary get the nomination and eventually the presidency. Basically, what he's come out and said is that in order to protect police in the state of Virginia, he is going to withdraw Virginia's agreement with 30 other states for reciprocity of concealed carry permits on the basis that those states issue concealed carry permits under measures that are less stringent than the state of Virginia.
Now, do you find that to be a little far-reaching? I certainly do. I think this is.
Yeah, I look at it at a couple different
aspects. These are not just the reciprocity isn't just given willy-nilly. I mean, there's certain standards that apply.
Well, see, here's the deal. Folks that go through, take the time, apply, and are vetted for concealed carry permits, regardless of the states in which they find themselves, rarely turn out to be people who go out and commit crimes. I find the premise that the Attorney General is using to be flawed logic and fraudulent logic, because I think that he's genuinely trying to use this as something that doesn't exist.
I think numbers are something like a percentage, a great bit of a percentage less than 1% of concealed weapon holders have been involved in some sort of violent crime or something like that. The ones that do get involved are the ones that get some kind of news coverage.
Well, and here's the thing. You got to go ahead and think, for the average citizen that's willing to pay the money and go through and have a cop look at your background, they're probably not the folks that are out there committing crimes. I mean, they're not just
jihad.
Yeah,
they're not creating.
Yeah. So, I think that what this is this is another step at backhanded gun control, denying Virginia's citizens of their God-given right. And, it to me, it's infuriating, and it gives me all the reason more just to do open carry. I mean, Virginia is a shall issue state. The counties that I live in shall issue. So without probable cause to deny somebody a concealed carry license, those have to be issued. Now, here it goes from the other side of the fact. I think it's disingenuous for the Attorney General of this state and Commonwealth, as they like to call it, to say that whatever state you come from in the Union, whatever vetting processes you have there are not good enough for the state of Virginia. And I think that by that logic, he is therefore opening up all kinds of things, such as, oh, hey, by the way, we're not going to accept marriage licenses from other states because maybe their I guess best way to say is maybe their procedures aren't strict enough.
Maybe they haven't had enough marriage training.
Yeah,
they haven't had enough marriage.
Why would they accept divorce decrees from other states? Why would they accept driver's licenses from other states? I think that what this is that, number one, I think that when this gets challenged in court, I don't think that it'll stand up. you're affecting a whole lot of things. Mainly interstate commerce, and I think that what it is he's attempting to regulate the lawful transaction of somebody with basically a license to carry from one state to another. And
what he's just trying to take a chisel to the Second Amendment is really what he's trying to do, and it's an all-out assault on the Second Amendment at every opportunity. Mainstream media is either something crazy that Trump said or offensive that Trump said. How guns are bad. Is there a jihadist in your closet? And guns are bad.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I think that there's that side of the issue where everything is focused on Trump and what's the latest, greatest, most outrageous thing Trump has said this week. And
he said that schlong in 2008.
Well, and not only that, he said that Hillary was off doing something disgusting.
Yeah. Like we all don't do something disgusting. Well, I mean, if you're going to get on Hillary about things, don't get Hillary on the fact that she had to pee. I mean, that's really like the lamest of all of them. So whatever. But Rand Paul put up some legislation today, and people got some interesting feelings and opinions about Rand Paul. Really, of all the GOP candidates, he's the only one who doesn't really want to make war on everybody. Well, he put up some legislation today that actually would make all executive orders from the White House gun control be advisory only, and that's some pretty interesting legislation. It's he's fast tracking it so it will get through. And Nick, I don't know how you feel about that. To me, it's nice, but I think it's just one more layer of barbed wire for the American taxpayer to number one, foot the bill for, and number two, to crawl through,
Yeah. The way I look at it right now is, Rand Paul is polling very, very low in the national numbers. We had another Republican, Lindsey Graham out of South Carolina. God knows why he even thought he was somewhere close to being ever considered. He withdrew from the race today. But I seem to think that Rand Paul, he's trying to remain relevant.
He withdrew yesterday.
Who, Rand Paul?
Oh, Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham. We
got. Well, I don't think this is necessarily aimed at his presidential campaign. This isn't going to be some sort of like magic, Hail Mary pass or something like that, scores him a touchdown. But
I don't even think that's possible for him.
No, I don't. It's totally not. Trump has got like 45% of the voters.
Yeah, but that's one of those interesting things. I believe you heard it here first when I told you that my predictions were for a Cruz/Rubio face-off in the final round. The poll numbers are starting to suggest that Donald Trump is starting to lose some headway to Cruz and Rubio, with Cruz out in front.
I don't necessarily believe it.
Yeah, whether you believe it or not. Like I said,
I'll just say through my mainstream media experiment still continues, and I've noticed that the Trump, the media's fascination with Trump has taken a sway, and I think that's everything about it right there. Well, Trump is controlled by the media.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is that he's very adept at keeping his name in the news, and you notice that he's been decidedly absent on saying anything that has to do with firearms in the last so many weeks.
That's really interesting because he in the 80s he was all for assault rifle control. He was one of the many voices, and now the Second Amendment's best friend. Like Trump Nugent 2016 is going to be something.
Yeah.
I think Donald Trump he's just a dude packing a parachute, trying to fight for the seat closest to the exit door so he can, bail first while he's telling everybody that this is the greatest plane ever, and, nobody else will ever remember a plane better than this. And I think Trump full of shit. I mean, I think he says what the people want to hear, and he says something crazy and everybody goes, nuts when he says something, offensive. I mean, seriously, Hillary got schlonged is taking over like the media, and that's really like probably one of the least offensive things you could say about Hillary.
Well, and here's the thing. Hillary Clinton's made another push for controlling firearms in the last week. This is, I find it very odd. I go back and look at the last couple presidential elections, and for the sitting president to come out and issue opinions on the candidates that are in the current running, I find it odd that he's actually doing that, because I don't recall either Bush or Clinton before him doing that very same thing. I believe that they kind of tended to let the process take its course and let those candidates fall out where they did. They didn't really call attention to themselves or call attention to those candidates. But I see that the president is going ahead and doing that here.
I think the president will do anything he can to keep the charade going. And really, war in Syria, troops on the ground in Syria, gun control at home, everything is designed right now to keep the charade of the dollar going. So that's kind of my observation on the whole thing. It's a ways away from where we're at, but it's also right on target, because to keep that charade of the dollar going, there's got to be one thing, and there's two ways to get it. There's got to be war. Because war is power. War is debt assignment. War, you can force the people to accept the money. And we're either going to get war on somebody else, or we're going to get war at home. Because if you can't force the people to accept the money, then you've got to declare those people an enemy, and then it's all going to turn to hell.
Well, you're either with us or against us.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, Michael, I want to go ahead and run something by you. We haven't really had a good chance to talk about guns here. We had a pretty long intro with the unfortunate necessity that accompanies all 3-year-olds. But I've got a pending
that's so
trade
disgusting.
offer.
We won't talk about that.
I've got a pending trade offer on a Ithaca Model 87. It's a rifled slug gun, and
nice shotgun.
And what I'm offering up in trade is that a Colombian Mauser in 30-06. So I'm thinking, at least from my standpoint, that's a pretty good deal. I've got other 30-06s in the safe, so I'm not without. And looking at a realistic value, it looks like I'm going anywhere between $350 and $400 on my rifle, up to down to the low end of $300 versus the median of $550, as high as $6 and as low as $5 for this slug gun.
Yeah, I don't know if he's gonna accept that. I don't think necessarily I would, but I'm a shotgun fan, so I don't think I'd necessarily trade off. Is it a 12 gauge or a 20 gauge?
It is a 12 gauge.
You should totally make that trade and then trade with me.
Well, I figured any shotgun.
We should do some gun show loot stuff, kind of. We should abuse the system and whatever.
Yeah, any time that I figure a shotgun graces my doorstep, it's probably sure to grace yours shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the 12 gauge. Aside from they're very handy for killing snakes in the garage and whatever. No, it's one of the more useful tools. We've got record numbers of firearms being sold after recent events, and we've also got a story that shows that Christmas time firearms are on people's lists.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too. Looking at the numbers of people buying firearms this holiday season, I think that the firearms industry in the United States has had a really good last quarter.
Oh, absolutely. And just, even if it weren't selling before, now we're selling again because there's been another scare. Maybe the goal is to have everybody in the United States armed, because they're really, the efforts to take firearms away from people, the threat of confiscation is making people act in a way they wouldn't have acted before. The last gun show I was at, there was a lot of women getting firearms, women that didn't normally look like they would get firearms.
Yeah.
And maybe they weren't getting the absolute best firearm for them, but they were getting something. And I found it to be kind of a good sign, kind of a bad sign.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. I heard another catchphrase in the political speak that's going around. It's interesting because anytime they want to talk about confiscation clandestinely, they'll say they need to have a conversation. And
Right.
it's funny. It's funny because
and it's never a conversation, right? Because what we're having is a conversation. There's a back and forth. There's a discussion of facts and something. Their conversation consists of telling you that you're bad, bringing up dead children, and making fun of your penis.
yeah,
That's the whole anti-gun argument right there. That's what they mean by having a conversation. We've been having a national conversation on. We've been having a national conversation on this since the beginning of the Bush presidency. Since the assault rifle ban basically sunsetted. We've had this conversation. We have this conversation every time. What we don't have a conversation of is who's doing the actual shooting. And that Nick, I linked you a story earlier. Zero Hedge. Some people like it, some people don't. I think it's a fairly decent website. It's got, I wouldn't say it's gospel, but got some. Usually, when they're linking a story with facts, the facts are easy to back up, and it's got a kind of an interesting story about like the preponderance of shooting between whites and blacks, and I think that story kind of really takes it beyond the gun control argument. It's really not the tool. It's the society and the culture, and the numbers are starkly different. I think it's like 39 to 12 or something like that. As what percentage die by firearm, and it's I think culture has a lot to do with it. I really think the entertainment system and the school system and lack of opportunities, educational and employment wise, has far greater to do with it. The drug war has far greater to do with it than the firearms itself. I mean, this is like a great big snowball, and you're trying to pick out one little, one pebble out of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm starting to get a little perturbed at folks in my area. I actually open carried the other day. Was going to be going out of my town into another town to go do some business, and I was starting to get the looks. I'm going into Home Depot and going into Lowe's because in my town we only have 18 miles difference between whether I go to Lowe's or whether I go to Home Depot, and I went ahead and decided to go to the town that has both of them instead of having to split my time. And some people that work there, they don't care. They understand that the people that wear guns on their hips are going to come in there, do business, and get out and go around. But it's the customers that I think that I'm starting to see, especially when they have that whiny, nasally New York / New Jersey accent. And this, like I said, this is not indicative of all folks from the Empire State or the Garden State, but they just kind of feel that it's their business to come up and tell you why you shouldn't have a firearm on your hip. And back where I grew up in Los Angeles, you don't talk to nobody you don't know personally. And I find that that's interesting that they're willing to do that. They're willing to be as afraid as they are of firearms, but they're willing to confront somebody about it.
Well, I think it's not necessarily they're willing to confront somebody about firearm. I think it's almost like a public shaming. And there's plenty of websites. I mean, like in the past week, I've taken a look at some. I would, I guess, to like generally classify them, they'd be like considered far left websites. And I mean, some of the ideas for firearms confiscation are just insane. And these are plans that are supposedly approved of by like 10% of the voters, according to polls. places.
Yeah, and then you end up getting stuff run through in the middle of the night and, midnight sessions.
Well, not only that, but I mean, like, these plans call for, if 30 million gun owners in the United States have to die getting this done, so be it. At least the guns will be gone. And, that's right there. That's just plain evil talk right there. And I really kind of like fear for our future. And I mean, I see the assault on our firearms coming in all sorts of fashion. Right now, we've got STAG Arms, which they're a maker of AR-15s and considered a high-end maker of AR-15s. Their rifles, their lowers usually go for double the price, at least, of a kind of a. I hesitate to use the term generic, but it's not actually appropriate because generic kind of denotes lower quality. But say something like a Palmetto State lower would come in at $79. The STAG lower comes in at probably $200. So and there's nothing wrong with the Palmetto State. Don't get me wrong. It's just it's almost like it's a basic piece, and the STAG has fancy engraving and it's storied history and blah blah blah. So you get that. Well, they've lost their FFL, or the owner of the company has lost his FFL. There was some dealings with some Class 3 lowers that weren't numbered and that had been transferred between locations. Really sort of technicality stuff. But they've lost, the owner has lost their FFL. They are still in business under a provisional FFL on the provision that the owner transfers the business out of his name, and he's not allowed to do any sort of business other than transferred, I guess. That kind of brings to mind is Freedom Group going to buy the STAG name.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that a lot of people don't know is that STAG Arms was very involved in the 3-gun and the competition shooting realm. And it was a pretty big deal when their business got raided. I believe the owner seemed to blame his son-in-law for a lack of administrative accountability of those firearms. And when the raid, I guess you can call it a raid.
If we say firearms, we should actually say that these are just lower receivers.
Just the lower receivers, a serial numbered item. Right. So it did send shockwaves throughout the shooting community, because I believe that, like I said, this was something that really kind of reverberated around the people that were doing the 3-gun competitions and the precision marksmanship competitions.
Well, and they were kind of a hand in special forces building their own rifles. They had people that worked intimately with what are considered to be operators. In helping them build custom rifles for their use in Afghanistan.
Right. And one of those things, what's the first thing that every operator or every wannabe operator wants to put on their gun? It's the can, right? Everybody wants to get that suppressor and wants to shoot subsonic ammunition.
Well, yeah, good luck with that. I mean, I'm not actually doing the paperwork on that. That's
$200 I could spend on more ammo.
Well, and it's not only that; it's just I find the government's reach into the firearms, and recently it's increased lust for more reach to be really kind of just intrusive and obnoxious. So I don't necessarily, if I want a silencer, I guess I'll get one. Blah blah blah. Do whatever paperwork and all that. But right now, no, I don't. The benefit of a silencer to me is outweighed by the bullshit you have to go through.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. I you and I were talking about what it takes to go through and get your own FFL so that you can start handling transactions for firearms, whether you're going to do this for personal or for business purposes. You kind of open yourself to quite a bit of scrutiny, not only from the BATFE. You can basically start having your home opened up for inspection if you decide to go ahead and use your own home as a home-based business for this. If you don't have a separate building.
Well, they can wherever the books are, they can inspect.
Right, and here's
So if
here's
you
the
take
thing.
your books home, if you take your books home for work one night, they can also inspect your home.
Well, and the thing that I want to make sure is that if I were to do something like that, I would have a separate building, that's independent of my home, and I certainly wouldn't mix and match any of the firearms that were, kept on my logs. Whether I would keep them as personal retention or stuff that I'm transferring, that stuff wouldn't grace my private residence. But it's one of those things that every bit of research that I've done, every person that I've talked to that has their own home-based FFL, they tell me that it's not a lucrative business to get into, and it's something that you really genuinely gotta intend to undertake as a primary business when you're done doing whatever it is that you're doing now.
Yeah, it is hard to break into it. The advent of like internet sales has really changed how the business has evolved. There's a lot of wholesalers out there that sell to the public. They sell to your FFL, and their prices are hard to beat. Like, let's just say like Bud's gun shop. That's a pretty big retailer. That they've got pretty much everything, and their prices are really, really good sometimes. They'll put some things on sale that, wow, you can't believe it, and you'll go to show it to somebody, and it's gone, but it's been replaced by something else that's at an extraordinary deal. Sometimes they have some massive sales going on right now because Christmas.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places out there. There's a lot of competition. So yeah, getting into it is like putting your life into it right now. Yeah, that's kind of a tough one. I'd say I'd have to probably say no to it.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that if you got a clean police record, it's probably not something that you can do. I think that you could easily get into it. Probably the most difficult thing would be to do setting up your own limited liability corporation. You're gonna end up doing stuff to set it up so you pay taxes on that, and you don't have any of your personal financial dealings intermingled with that. I think that's a risk. But when you come down and look at it, if you have the ability and you have a need in your community that is underserved, like for example, cities like San Francisco where you're legislated out of it, but what about those surrounding towns and communities where people might be willing to go to purchase a gun?
I think California is kind of a lost cause when it comes to that. I mean, I'm willing to bet that any kind of effort to open up any kind of new gun store anywhere in California is met with intense opposition. I mean, you could look at one of the larger retailers in Southern California, which would be Turner's Outdoorsman. I think they've got like, I don't know, 8, 9, 12 stores, something like that, in varying areas. Well, they've got their ad, which their prices are comparable to what they are, through the rest of the nation. Taking into consideration that everything is either a 10-round magazine or it's got a pin. It's got a pin magazine or whatever California only deal that it's got. But then you look at like the listings for the stores and some of the firearms that are for sale, and it says not for sale, in Reseda, Los Angeles, Garden Grove, and Canoga Park or something like that. And it's and those aren't the locations. I believe Reseda is one of the locations, but because those localities have regulations that go above and beyond the state, that limit the size of the handgun.
Right.
And I think really the push in the future is going to be away from, screaming about the evil assault rifles and the Bushmaster that kills babies through a school and all that. But the small concealable handgun, that's what they really don't want you to have.
Yeah, and when you think about it, I do believe that certain bond arms, firearms, are illegal in certain jurisdictions due to the fact that they can rapidly change out barrels and go between calibers. Bond arms.
Well, I didn't know that. I knew that like the 410 and 45 long Colt one was not available in California. Similar to like the Taurus Judge isn't available because, well, it fires a shotgun round.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's one of those things that you could go between the the 410, you can go between all those, and you can all see how the state, which I guess based on the recent Supreme Court decision that says it is well within the jurisdiction's right to regulate the firearm. I guess that's being supported. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think that the dissenting opinion was the appropriate opinion. I think that there is a push that is going through the courts right now, and I think it's really another assault on the Second Amendment decision that we had back in 2008, I believe it was, that affirmed the individual's right to bear a firearm. I think that this is a second go. I believe it was Justice Sotomayor that said a future wiser court would issue rulings on the Second Amendment.
Right, you know what? That's just asking for war. Because, I mean, once again, I'm going to have to go back to Captain Gringo's just most insightful comment, and probably the comment of the century, is this will be the issue that turns us into the Balkan Americas. I mean, I can really see something like that coming down. These are the people who want to take your guns. They want to take your right. And, well, I mean, it's similar to the kind of like polarization we see in the media, where you've got like the coastal media, and then you've got the flyover states. If your people weren't featured in a Seinfeld episode, you don't count.
Right. Well, and I sit there and I seem to think about it. I'm looking for one of the justices to retire prior to the end of the current administration, and that way, you could have this president fundamentally change the makeup of the court for 30 or 40 years to come. You take a look at his appointments. So far, he's had 2 appointments, both extremely liberal judges. One that was more of I would say more of a political operative than any type of judicial candidate in Kagan. But you're taking a look at a guy who said it's his mission to fundamentally change the backdrop or the background of American society as a whole. We have quite a bit of evidence that shows that he's willing to do that through, forced immigration, ignoring the fact that the people that he's trying to immigrate into this country can't be vetted.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that the union stands much longer as this? Because this is a real serious question, right? You've spent the majority of your life in service to the country. I mean, it's the country I grew up in. I spent I guess if you could consider public service like service to the country, I spent a good number of my time in that. This is my home. This is my nation. This is what I love. And right now, it's not what I was taught to believe that it was supposed to be. And, maybe that's a problem with my education or something, but the fact is that we're not following the precepts that this country was set out on. And how much longer can it go down that path as one country?
Yeah, I don't think that there's going to be anything that's going to be a catalyst for a near-term division of the states. I think that what we will see is that certain states are going to continue their path of regulating themselves out of a citizenry, and other states that are going to go the path of allowing more freedoms and liberties and having people in their governments that are there to preserve liberties instead of to regulate your ability to do anything.
And that's where I'm going to have to disagree with you, because I don't see any state doing anything to increase anybody's liberties other than the states that have decriminalized or legalized marijuana. Those are the only states that have done anything that are looking out for the people's good.
Well, here's my point. So you take a look at something that's kind of cool. It's kind of innovative in a sense. Take a look at fantasy football, right? Fantasy football has been around for probably 15 years or so, in varying forms. it took a little bit of ingenuity to come up with an idea that you can get a group of people in an office to come around and have something in common between them. And then it turned into, a burgeoning interstate commerce that went nationwide. And you've got states like New York who, just like on other things that they've done, they've enacted legislation to prohibit the exercise of somebody's desire to spend money in
Yeah,
any given way.
New York's a horrible example because New York wants to regulate caffeinated peanut butter.
Well,
Now, I'll tell you what, I think caffeinated peanut butter is an awesome idea.
Well, and this is just like the soda ban. We're going to ban sodas over 32 ounces or greater, or whatever it was. Well, what's to prevent you from getting two 24-ounce sodas? Or we're trying to regulate the basic ideas of what somebody wants to do because you, as a politician, know better than the ignorant masses. And I think that there's going to come a time when people are going to be willing to stand up and say, no. And oh, by the way, if you want to change my opinion, you're going to have to do something about it. Now, whether or not that's something that has to do with, I don't even want to go so far as to say as armed rebellion or insurrection, but I think that people are going to be willing to stand up and say no.
Let me say something. In the United States, there's two ways to think. And number one, and the right way to do it is nonviolent and peaceful, and the only effective nonviolent, peaceful way to do it is through outright tax rebellion. Right? That just everybody just says, "Fuck you! You don't get no more money from me."
Yeah, I don't think it's like that because you have the Treasury Department, and you have the IRS that's armed to the teeth.
Right. Which gets to the second point, which is violence. Right. So the only peaceful way to do this is through massive tax revolt, which people won't do, and that leaves us with violence. That's the only way to change things. It's just, in my opinion, this thing is too far gone to save. This house is ruined. There's termites in the walls. The plumbing is bad. The electricity is from 1942. It's there's holes in the roof. There's sewage in the yard. This is not worth fixing anymore. There's no way to fix it.
Well, I don't think that there's not a way to fix it. I think that the way to fix it is not going to be looked at as beneficial to the folks that are running the show. And just like any other, organization, I think that you can only really affect change going top down. I don't think you can do change going bottom up. I think that bottom up change sounds good, and it's that grassroots mentality. I don't think it affects change.
Top down. If you have change from the top down, you no longer have you no longer have the same place. That's where the violence comes in. And I mean, I'm not advocating violence. I know it's going to happen. I'm just kind of stating the fact. I personally think it's better to act than to be forced to react. But top down change involves bloodshed. That's just all there is to it.
Well, but here's the thing. If this is a government of the people and for the people and by the people, I think
that the state has to have the monopoly on violence. All right. Yeah. So if he casually mentions something like that in a PBS interview, that the state has to have the monopoly on violence, that means he's more than willing to enforce it and to crack down.
Yeah, I take a look at it like this. You have a society that enacts laws not necessarily for the good of the people, but more so for the good of preserving that society. Whether or not folks agree with those laws or not, you get enough folks that don't agree with it, and stuff gets changed. But I also see it from the standpoint of at some point you got to have some rules in society for people to get along, and those are those rules are mainly followed by the people that would want to continue living in those societies. And you're going to have folks that just decide, hey, look, I don't want to live by anybody's rules no matter what. Those guys become the outcasts. Those guys become the outliers to the citizenry. but it's a matter of the people who never intended to live within the confines of the law that make it difficult for those that do, that want to exercise their right on things like owning firearms, or never having to register their ammunition with a forensic fingerprint for the ammunition that they purchase, or have an ammunition registry when they go to buy it. I mean, those are all ideas that are really being pushed in states like California, or if, like you have in New Jersey, you want to have the biometrically enhanced firearm that only can be discharged by the user who's wearing a special bracelet.
So that brings us to another story. Smith & Wesson sent a cease and desist letter to Apex Tactical. And Apex Tactical was taking Apex parts and taking a Smith & Wesson M&P and basically upgrading the M&P. They would, mill the slide, change this, that, the other, pop out triggers, recoil springs. They'd work the gun up nice. It was still a Smith & Wesson M&P. Apex was calling it a dream gun, is what they were calling it. Kind of a great name, I guess. And Smith & Wesson sent them a letter saying cease and desist. And the pretext of this is that they're taking a Smith & Wesson item and remarketing it as their own, which I can totally see it. But then you've got to look at other things that are going on, like in the United States, with like in regards to like intellectual property, and companies like John Deere and Chevrolet saying that they're actively working, so you cannot upgrade your vehicle. You can't work on your vehicle because it's intellectual property. And so maybe we're looking at like DCMA takedowns of like spare part makers, because you're violating the intellectual property.
Well, and do you think that intellectual property is basically for lack of a better term, the copyright on that intellectual property, or the protections on that intellectual property? Do you believe that those end when that intellectual property takes a transaction to change hands? Like you buy a car, right? And
right. Oh, absolutely. I think once you buy the item, it's yours to do with as you see fit.
It should be. But, it's the same thing with the music that got passed through that Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which was your music that you purchase is not your music. That is intellectual property that belongs to the people who sold it to you and or the musician who created it.
Right. See, I think once again the people are going to realize that they've been legislated out of their livelihood, and there is no legislative fix to that. The system is set up to where, go ahead and vote. Yeah, write a letter to your congressman. Yeah, go ahead and sit in front of the city council. Yeah, start a petition. Yeah, no bullshit. No. There's too many people's lives ruined by the legislation for people to like act within the parameters that have merely been set up to fuck them.
Yeah. Well, Michael, we're getting close to the end of time. I think we need to go ahead and hit some gun safety rules here.
All right. Every firearm is loaded until you visually and physically inspect and ensure that it is not loaded. Keep the barrel downrange. Don't point it at anything you don't want to destroy. Know what your target is. Know what is behind your target at all times. And the big one. And Christmas is coming up. Everybody's getting a new firearm. Keep the booger hook off the bank switch until you are ready to discharge the weapon. No negligent discharges this Christmas with your brand new Glock 44.
Is that what the model is this week?
I don't even know. Glock has so many models now. It's not even. I think maybe the 43 is their highest number. So yeah, maybe 44 will be something special.
So, and by that logic, does the Glock 44 hold 44 rounds of 44 Magnum?
Yeah, that would be the bomb right there, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That would only be about $100 to load that.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. I think the big seller right now is the Glock Model 43, compact 9mm. It's interesting. I think that
say that, but go ahead and try and find yourself a Glock 19. Those things are sold out.
Oh yeah, totally. So the funny thing is, people that are willing to spend that kind of money on a firearm, especially purchased new, are generally not the folks that are going to go out and commit crimes with it. Usually, you're going to find the folks that buy these secondhand or
stolen firearms.
Stolen firearms, for lack of better
I
terms.
would dare say that a good number of honest, well-meaning, well-intentioned people actively buy firearms. Number one, for the cost savings or the perceived cost savings. I don't. Different. Sometimes I think you use firearms for more. But I mean, they're actively trying to stay off the list. And you know what? More power to them, because the list is only set up to destroy.
Well, when you take a look at it, I believe in most jurisdictions, to purchase a new firearm as a handgun, you must be 21. But there's very few laws on the books in most states that prevent somebody from purchasing a handgun secondhand that is under 21.
I've got no problem with that.
So when you take a look at it, all these common sense gun control measures that we have, and the stipulations of having firearms be only given, or being able to have transactions when the person is of age and or passing background checks. I think that it's disingenuous to suggest that those types of laws keep our citizens safe.
Well, those types of laws are only angled to one thing, and that is creating more names on a list. And I'm telling you, once President Hillary and whichever J Street appointee that she gets as her vice president, once she enacts confiscation, because I firmly believe that a President Hillary Clinton will enact some sort of confiscation in the United States, some sort of common sense Australia-style confiscation, whether it's a buyback or whatever, it will be mandatory, and at some point doors will get kicked in.
Yeah, well, like I said, we've said before, you can't have a buyback from something that was never purchased from the government, right?
Really. If I had to do an actual, like, honest-to-God gun buyback, I'd be making trips all over the place.
Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure there's quite a few owners out there whose firearms would have met an untimely demise, traveling over a bridge, over a Mississippi River type body of water.
Sometimes the John Doe flipped over.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. This is this
step pulled away. All those rifles can go right to the bottom.
Yeah. Ask those guys what happened during Katrina.
Yeah, really.
So, this is the last show that we have before Christmas. Want to make sure that everybody gets a chance out there to go take advantage of some of those ammunition sales that are starting to flood your email inboxes from the various companies that are out there. I wanted to give a quick shout. I was able to pick up a what I thought was a Gonga deal, 50 rounds of the 300 Blackout in the 147 grain full metal jacket, and that was $20 delivered, and I got that from Freedom Munitions.
That's not bad. $20 to your door is not bad at all.
Yeah, so what they actually had was 15% off, and that was 300 Blackout as well as 357, and they actually had free shipping for first-time customers. So
their price, the 357 was the same as the 300 Blackout?
Well, yeah, depending upon, like I said, you can
get... I've shot a little bit of Freedom munitions at 9mm, just 115 grain full metal jacket stuff, nothing fancy, more like Plinkin ammunition. And while it all discharged, I found towards the end of one box, I had like 6 that just didn't have quite enough power to like clear to clear the slide. Like I was getting the bullet was getting caught,
right,
or the shell was getting caught, and I kind of think that was underpowered.
Yeah, I've got zero experience with 357. I've kind of stayed away from revolvers, and
yeah, I like 357. I think 357 is a cartridge with authority. It's cartridge available on like lots of plastic firearms. I personally like the 357 and the Blackhawk. I think the Blackhawk is I think it's much better than the Colt.
Well, Michael, we're getting our bumper, so I want to say thanks to our folks in chat. Michael, it's great to hear from you. Thanks to Jules.
Nick, thanks a lot. I appreciate you being here. UCY.TV, folks. Everybody, thanks a lot. Stick around. Great programming.